I was back, reborn, reliving a day I knew all too well, my 18th birthday. The birthday that no one would acknowledge. I didn't react. I didn't panic. I didn't feel the familiar sting of tears, the familiar knot of disappointment in my stomach. I simply lay there, listening. The scent of coffee, strong and sweet, drifted up the stairs, mingling with the faint aroma of bacon. My mother was making breakfast, and Livia, my younger sister, was undoubtedly the center of attention. "Livia, you should wear that blue dress today. It makes you look so elegant," I heard my mother say, her voice filled with that warm, adoring tone she usually reserved for Livia. "Oh, I forgot," Livia's voice, light and airy, responded. "The girls are throwing me a little celebration later. I hope you got me a gift, Mom." A little celebration. For Livia's upcoming birthday, which was still a week away. My actual birthday today would be, as always, ignored. I swung my legs out of bed, the worn wooden floorboards creaking beneath my feet. I walked over to the mirror, staring at my reflection. 18 again. Young, fresh-faced, with a lifetime of disappointments ahead of me. Except this time, I knew better. I watched them from the top of the stairs, leaning against the railing. My mother and Livia sitting at the kitchen table, bathed in the golden morning light. Livia twirling a strand of her blonde hair, chattering excitedly about her plans. My mother gazing at her with a look of pure, unadulterated pride. My father was nowhere to be seen. Probably already at work, buried in his spreadsheets and conference calls. He'd forget, too. He always did. My brother Mark, he wouldn't even be home. Too busy with his own life, his own friends, his own important matters. I had lived this exact day before. I knew the script by heart. The forced smiles, the awkward silences, the eventual half-hearted, "Oh, right, happy birthday," tossed my way as an afterthought if I was lucky. But this time, I wouldn't play my part. I wouldn't wait. I wouldn't hope. I turned away from the scene below, my heart strangely calm. I walked back into my bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. I went to my closet and pulled out a small, worn duffel bag. I packed quickly, efficiently. A few changes of clothes, my favorite book, the small amount of cash I'd managed to squirrel away over the years, essentials. I didn't pack any mementos, any photographs, any reminders of the life I was leaving behind. There was nothing here I wanted to keep. I walked out of my room, down the stairs, and out the front door without a word. The laughter from the kitchen followed me, a cheerful soundtrack to my silent departure. As I walked away from the house, the only home I'd ever known, I didn't feel sadness or anger or regret. I felt free. A quiet, liberating sense of release. This time, I was choosing my own path. The city streets were bustling with early morning activity, people rushing to work, to school, to their lives. But I felt strangely detached, as if I were watching a movie, a scene I was no longer a part of. I was invisible, a ghost drifting through the familiar landscape. And for the first time, that invisibility felt like a superpower, not a curse. I walked to the bus station, the air growing thick with the smell of exhaust fumes and diesel. The station was a chaotic hub of activity, people coming and going, their faces etched with anticipation, or weariness, or boredom. I approached the ticket counter, my heart beating a steady, determined rhythm. "One-way ticket, please," I said to the clerk, my voice surprisingly steady. "Where to?" he asked, without looking up. I hesitated. Where to? It didn't matter, anywhere but here. I scanned the list of destinations, my eyes landing on a random name. Seabreeze Cove, I said. I'd never heard of it. It sounded peaceful. "That'll be $20, he said, handing me a ticket. I paid with cash, the bills feeling strangely heavy in my hand. This was it, no turning back. I found a seat near the back of the bus, settling in for the long ride. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a notification from the family group chat. I didn't bother to check it. I knew what it would be. Pictures of Livia, messages about her party, plans for the weekend. No mention of me. I deleted all notifications. I watched the city blur past the window, the familiar landmarks receding into the distance. The skyscrapers, the bustling streets, the house on Oak Street. It all felt like a distant dream, a life I'd left behind. The memory surfaced, unbidden. a small, specific instance of being overlooked. My 10th birthday. My parents had promised me a cake, a special chocolate cake with my favorite frosting. But Livia had decided, at the last minute, that she wanted to learn to play the violin. My parents, eager to encourage her artistic talent, had rushed out to buy her a violin, completely forgetting about my cake. I'd spent the evening eating leftover pizza, alone in my room, while Livia screeched her way through Twinkle Twinkle Little Star downstairs. I pushed the memory away, refusing to let it sting. It was the past, and I was moving forward. The bus rumbled on, carrying me away from everything I'd ever known towards an uncertain future. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope, a glimmer of possibility. I was free, and that was all that mattered. The bus pulled into Seabreeze Cove late in the afternoon. The town was small, quaint, and utterly charming. The air smelled of salt and sea, a refreshing change from the city smog I was used to. Colorful houses lined the narrow streets, their gardens overflowing with flowers. Fishing boats bobbed gently in the harbor, their masts swaying in the breeze. It was a postcard-perfect scene, a world away from the sterile, suffocating environment I'd left behind. I found a boarding house near the beach, a faded Victorian building with a wraparound porch and a sign that read, "Rooms for Rent." The landlady, a woman named Mrs. Peterson, with kind eyes and a warm smile, showed me to a small but clean room on the second floor. It had a window overlooking the ocean, a view that would have cost a fortune in the city. Here, it was just part of the scenery. I paid for a week in advance using the last of my cash. I needed to find a job and fast. I spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the town. It was a slow, unhurried pace of life, a stark contrast to the frantic energy of the city. People smiled at me, said hello, made eye contact. It was disarming. I found a small family-run cafe near the harbor, the Salty Siren. A handwritten sign in the window read, "Waitress wanted." It felt like a sign. I walked in, the scent of freshly brewed coffee and baking bread filling the air. A bell above the door jingled, announcing my arrival. A woman, probably in her late 40s with a tired but friendly face, looked up from behind the counter. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I saw the sign in the window," I said. "I'm looking for a job." She looked me over, assessing. "Ever waitress before?" "Yes," I lied smoothly. I'd worked plenty of odd jobs in my previous life, enough to know the basics. She hired me on the spot. "Trial basis," she said, "but I could start tomorrow." I walked out of the cafe, a small smile playing on my lips. I had a job, a place to stay, a new beginning. I spent the evening walking along the beach, the sand cool and soft beneath my bare feet. The waves crashed against the shore, a rhythmic, soothing sound. The sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple. It was beautiful, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peaceful. A memory flashed, a sharp contrast to the present moment. My 16th birthday. I'd spent weeks planning a small party, inviting a few close friends. I'd even baked my own cake. But on the day of the party, my parents had announced that they were taking Livia to a special audition for a performing arts school. They'd completely forgotten about my party. My friends had made excuses, one by one, until I was left alone with a cake that no one would eat. I pushed the memory aside. It didn't matter anymore. I was no longer that girl, striving for attention, for approval, for love that would never come. I was here, in this new place, creating a new life for myself. I sat down on a piece of driftwood, watching the waves, listening to the cry of the seagulls. I was no longer Serena Vale, the forgotten daughter. I was just Serena, and for the first time, that felt like enough. I was content, I was free, and I was finally truly happy. The Vale household hummed with the frenetic energy of pre-celebration. Livia's birthday, or rather the week-long extravaganza leading up to her actual birthday, was in full swing. Balloons bobbed from the ceiling, streamers draped across the doorways, and the kitchen counter was overflowing with platters of hors d'oeuvres and half-finished party favors. A week had passed, 7 days, and no one had noticed that Serena was gone. Livia, the birthday girl, flitted around the house like a hummingbird, her phone glued to her ear, her voice a constant stream of excited chatter. No, pastel pink, not hot pink. Are you blind? Yes. The peonies need to be delivered by noon. I know, it's my party. I can have whatever I want. She paused, tapping a perfectly manicured fingernail against her chin. Mom, where's Serena? She asked, her tone more irritated than concerned. I need her to pick up the extra balloons. The ones with the glitter. She knows the place. Her mother, Carol, was elbow deep in a bowl of something that was supposed to be artisanal dip, but looked suspiciously like curdled mayonnaise. Serena? Oh, I don't know, dear. Probably in her room, sulking as usual. Livia rolled her eyes. Ugh, she's so dramatic. It's my birthday week. Can't she just be normal for once? She pulled out her phone and typed a quick text. Serena, get to Party Palace now. Extra glitter balloons. Don't be late. She hit send, not bothering to wait for a reply. Serena always did what she was told, eventually. Livia continued her preparations, her mind already flitting to the next item on her endless to-do list. The guest list, the seating chart, the playlist, everything had to be perfect. This was her moment, her time to shine. As the day wore on, a tiny seed of unease began to sprout within Livia. It wasn't concern, not really. More like annoyance. Serena was supposed to be helping. She was always the responsible one, the one who took care of the details, the one who made sure everything ran smoothly. The little celebration her friends had planned turned out to be a rather large gathering at a trendy downtown club. Livia, dressed in the blue dress her mother had suggested, it did make her look elegant, held court surrounded by a gaggle of admiring friends. But even amidst the laughter and the compliments, a nagging thought kept intruding. Where was Serena? She glanced at her phone again. Still no reply. That was unusual. Serena always replied eventually, even if it was just a terse K. As the evening drew, the party was starting. Livia, surrounded by her friends, started to open her gifts. She got a lot of things she liked, but there still was no sign of Serena, and for the first time, someone had noticed her absence. Where's your sister? Her friend, Ashley asked. Livia frowned. She had forgotten about her. A full month, had passed since Serena walked out the door, and the silence in the Vale household was deafening. Not a peaceful silence, but a strained, uneasy silence, filled with unspoken accusations and growing anxiety. Carol, Serena's mother, finally broke. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling slightly, and typed a text message. Serena, where are you? You haven't been home in a while. Call me. She stared at the screen, waiting for the familiar delivered notification. It never came. She hit resend. Still nothing. She deleted the message. Maybe Serena had just changed her number. That was it. She was being silly. More time passed. Days bled into weeks. The silence stretched, becoming unbearable. It was Richard, Serena's father, who finally cracked. He needed help. He was drowning in paperwork, overwhelmed by the financial side of his business, the side Serena had always handled with quiet efficiency. Damn it, he muttered, slamming his fist on his desk. Where is that girl? He picked up his phone and dialed Serena's number, the number he hadn't bothered to call in. He couldn't even remember how long. Straight to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. He called Carol, his voice tight with frustration. Have you heard from Serena? No, Carol replied, her voice defensive. She's probably just sulking somewhere, being dramatic as usual. Sulking? She hasn't been home in weeks. She's not answering her phone, her emails. It's not like her. She'll come back when she gets over herself, Carol insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. She'll come back when she needs money, Richard added, equally unconvincingly. The conversation devolved into an argument, a bitter exchange of accusations and recriminations. They were both starting to realize the gaping hole Serena's absence had left in their lives. They had taken her for granted, used her, ignored her, and now she was gone. Later that evening, Carol was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a half-eaten bowl of ice cream. Livia was upstairs, getting ready for another night out. Mom, have you seen my diamond earrings? Livia called down, her voice laced with irritation. The ones Serena borrowed? Carol froze. Serena hadn't borrowed the earrings. Livia had given them to Serena, a rare gesture of generosity, after Serena had helped her out of a particularly sticky situation. A situation Carol had completely forgotten about. I I don't know, dear, Carol stammered. Maybe ask Serena? The name hung in the air, a sudden sharp reminder of the missing member of their family. Livia came downstairs, her expression confused. Ask Serena? Mom, are you okay? Serena hasn't been. Carol's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening in horror. She had forgotten. For a split second, she had completely forgotten that Serena was gone. I. I just. She stammered, unable to meet Livia's gaze. The slip, the accidental utterance of Serena's name, hung in the air, a chilling testament to their collective guilt, their shared neglect. The first crack in their carefully constructed facade of normalcy had appeared, and it was only a matter of time before the whole thing came crashing down. The absence of Serena was no longer a silent void. It was a gaping wound, festering and spreading its poison throughout the Vale family. They were like a poorly constructed building, suddenly missing a crucial support beam, and the cracks were starting to show. Richard, Serena's father, was the first to feel the full impact. His business, a small but once thriving construction company, was spiraling downwards. He'd always relied on Serena to handle the finances, the paperwork, the intricate details he'd never had the patience for. She had a knack for numbers, a quiet efficiency that had kept the company afloat. Now, invoices went unpaid, bills piled up, and clients grew increasingly frustrated. He was drowning in a sea of red ink, his carefully constructed empire crumbling around him. He tried to manage it himself, but he was lost. He didn't understand the spreadsheets, the software, the intricate dance of debits and credits. He'd always just signed where Serena told him to sign, trusted her implicitly. He'd never bothered to learn the details. Now he was paying the price. Meanwhile, Mark, Serena's brother, found himself embroiled in a scandal of his own making. A series of reckless decisions, fueled by alcohol and a sense of invincibility, had landed him in hot water. A compromising video, a leaked email, a disgruntled ex-girlfriend. It was a perfect storm of bad choices and public humiliation. In the past, Serena would have been there to clean up his mess. She had a knack for smoothing things over, for negotiating with angry parties, for spinning the narrative in his favor. She was the fixer, the problem solver, the one who always knew what to do. But Serena wasn't there, and Mark was left to face the consequences alone. Livia, the golden child, the pampered princess, was also feeling the sting of Serena's absence. Her carefully cultivated social life, once a whirlwind of parties and popularity, was starting to unravel. She realized, with a growing sense of unease, that Serena had been the silent architect of her social success. Serena had been the one who remembered birthdays, who sent thank you notes, who smoothed over awkward situations, who mediated disputes between friends. Serena had been the one who made sure Livia always looked good, always said the right thing, always had the perfect connections. Without Serena, Livia was floundering. She made social gaffes, offended influential people, forgot important events. Her carefully constructed image, the image of the perfect, popular, effortlessly charming girl, was starting to crack. The family, once a unit of, albeit dysfunctional, support, was now a collection of isolated individuals, each struggling with their own problems, each blaming the others for their misfortunes. The arguments grew more frequent, more bitter, more pointed. "If Serena were here, she'd know what to do," Richard would snap at Carol, his voice filled with frustration and resentment. "Don't you dare blame Serena for your incompetence," Carol would retort, her voice tight with anger. "You're the one who ignored her, who treated her like a servant. And you're the one who spoiled Livia rotten, who never gave Serena a second thought." Livia, caught in the crossfire, would retreat to her room, her phone clutched in her hand, scrolling through social media, desperately seeking validation from a world that was increasingly indifferent to her. The realization, slow and painful, began to dawn on each of them. They had relied on Serena. They had taken her for granted. They had treated her like a shadow, an afterthought, a convenient solution to their problems. And now she was gone. It was Carol, sitting alone in the kitchen one evening, staring at a faded photograph of Serena, that finally articulated the unspoken truth. The photograph showed Serena as a child, a shy, awkward girl with a gap-toothed smile, holding a handmade birthday card. A card Carol had barely glanced at before tossing it aside. She picked up the photograph, her fingers tracing the outline of Serena's face. She looked at the card, the childish scrawl, the heartfelt message, and she realized with a sickening jolt of guilt that she didn't even know her own daughter. She didn't know her favorite color, her favorite food, her dreams, her fears, her hopes. She had been so focused on Livia, on Mark, on Richard, that she had completely overlooked Serena. She had treated her own daughter like a ghost, a shadow, a non-entity. And now, that's exactly what she had become. A ghost, haunting their lives with her absence, a constant reminder of their collective failure. The glue that had held their fragile family together was gone, and they were falling apart, piece by piece. The cramped room at Mrs. Peterson's boarding house had served its purpose. It had been a sanctuary, a place to regroup, to plan my next move. But it was time to move on. I'd saved enough money from my waitressing job to afford a small apartment, a tiny studio overlooking the harbor. It wasn't much, but it was mine. My own space, my own haven, a place where I could finally start to build a life for myself on my own terms. The Salty Siren had been a good starting point, a way to get my feet wet, to learn the rhythm of this new town. But I knew I couldn't wait tables forever. I had skills I'd honed in my previous life, skills that had been ignored and undervalued by my family. In my old life, I'd been the quiet, efficient one, the one who handled the family's finances, who organized their schedules, who solved their problems. I'd also had a knack for computers, a talent I'd kept hidden, a secret passion I'd never dared to pursue. Now, I was free to pursue it. I used my savings to buy a used laptop, a powerful machine capable of handling the tasks I had in mind. I started small, offering my services online. Website design, data analysis, online marketing, word spread quickly. I was good, damn good, and I was fast, reliable, and discreet. My business grew, slowly but surely. I named it Phoenix Solutions, a nod to my own rebirth, my own rise from the ashes of my past life. I also started to make friends, real friends. People who saw me, who valued me, who appreciated me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. There was Sarah, the owner of the Salty Siren, who had given me my first job. There was Mark, a different Mark, thankfully, a local fisherman who shared my love of the ocean. There was Emily, a bookstore owner who had that cozy feeling. We'd gather at the beach for bonfires, share stories, laugh, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged. But the past wasn't completely gone. It lingered in the shadows of my mind, in the flashes of memory that still haunted me. The screech of tires, the blinding headlights, the crushing impact, the darkness, the accident that had ended my previous life. I remembered it now in vivid, terrifying detail. I'd been driving home from a late-night study session, exhausted, stressed, overwhelmed by the constant pressure to be perfect, to be invisible, to be everything and nothing at the same time. A drunk driver had run a red light, plowing into my car. I hadn't stood a chance. The memory still made me shudder, but it no longer held the same power over me. It was a part of my past, a part of who I was, but it didn't define me. I had survived. I had been given a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. I was building a new life, a life filled with purpose, with joy, with genuine connection. I was Serena, reborn, and I was finally free. The Vale family was in full-blown panic mode. Serena's continued absence had shattered their carefully constructed facade of normalcy, revealing the gaping void at the heart of their family. Carol, fueled by a potent mixture of guilt and desperation, was leading the charge. She'd started with the obvious, Serena's old job at the accounting firm. "Serena Vale?" the receptionist had said, her brow furrowed in confusion. "I'm sorry, but we have no one by that name working here," Carol had insisted, showing the receptionist a photograph, her voice rising in frustration. But it was no use. Serena had vanished without a trace, leaving no forwarding address, no contact information, nothing. Livia, meanwhile, had turned to the social media, her usual hunting ground. But Serena's profiles were gone, deleted. erased. It was as if she had never existed in the digital world. Livia, the social media queen, was baffled. How could someone simply disappear from the internet? It's like she's a ghost, Livia muttered, her fingers flying over her phone, desperately searching for any trace of her sister. Richard, desperate and out of options, finally resorted to hiring a private investigator. He handed the PI a worn photograph of Serena, the same one Carol had shown the receptionist. It was the only recent photo they had. "Find her," Richard said, his voice hoarse with desperation. "Find my daughter." But the PI, a seasoned professional with a network of contacts and informants, was coming up empty. Serena had covered her tracks well. She had used cash, avoided security cameras, left no digital trail. She had become a ghost, a whisper, a phantom. As the search dragged on, the family's realization grew. They didn't know Serena. They didn't know her friends, her habits, her interests, her dreams. They had overlooked her so completely, so consistently, that they had no idea where to even begin looking for her. They had treated her like a shadow, an invisible presence in their lives. And now she had become just that, a shadow, vanished into the ether, leaving them with nothing but regret and the chilling realization that they might never see her again. They had lost her, and it was entirely their own fault. I chose the location. A small, nondescript cafe in a town halfway between my new life and the one I'd left behind. Neutral ground. A place with no memories, no emotional baggage. A place where I could finally say goodbye. I arrived early, settling into a booth near the back, my hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I was calm, resolved. This was the final act, the closing scene of a play I no longer wanted to be a part of. They arrived a few minutes later, my family. My mother, her face etched with worry and guilt. My father, his shoulders slumped, his eyes filled with a sadness I'd never seen before. Livia, her usual bubbly demeanor replaced by a subdued, almost frightened expression. And Mark looking awkward and out of place. They stood there, hesitant, unsure of what to do, what to say. The perfect family portrait, shattered and broken. "Serena," my mother began, her voice trembling. "You look different." I simply nodded, taking a sip of my tea. Different? Yes, I was different. I was stronger, more confident, more, myself. They sat down, crowding around the small table, their presence filling the space, a stark contrast to the quiet solitude I'd grown accustomed to. The apologies came first, a torrent of words, a flood of regret. "We're so sorry, Serena," my mother said, her voice choked with emotion. "We didn't realize, we didn't see. We were so wrapped up in our own lives." "We need you," my father added, his voice hoarse. "Please come home. Things are falling apart without you." Livia, for once, was silent, her eyes downcast, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. Mark mumbled something. I listened patiently, letting them pour out their guilt, their remorse, their pleas. But their words felt hollow, empty. They were too late. They spoke of how much they missed me, how much they needed me, how much they regretted their actions. But their words were like raindrops on a window pane, sliding away without leaving a trace. When they finally finished, when the silence settled around us, heavy and expectant, I looked at them, each one in turn. My mother, her eyes red-rimmed and pleading. My father, his face etched with a weariness that went beyond mere exhaustion. Livia, stripped of her usual bravado, looking lost and vulnerable. Mark, he was never part of the picture. "You never remembered me when I was there," I said, my voice calm and steady, devoid of any emotion. "You never saw me, never heard me, never acknowledged my existence. I was invisible, a shadow in your perfect family portrait." I paused, letting my words sink in. "So why," I continued, my gaze unwavering, "should I remember you now?" The silence that followed was deafening. Their faces, a mixture of shock, disbelief, and dawning horror, reflected the truth of my words. I stood up, placing my untouched tea on the table. There was nothing more to say. "Goodbye," I said, my voice soft but firm. And then I walked away. I walked away from the table, from the cafe, from my family, from my past. I walked away, leaving them behind, this time for good. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt a sense of closure, of finality. The weight that had been pressing down on me for so long, the weight of their neglect, their indifference, their casual cruelty, it was finally gone. I was free, truly free. The ghost of Serena Vale had finally been laid to rest. And a new woman, a woman of strength, of resilience, of self-worth, had taken her place. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was mine. And that was all that mattered. The salt air whips through my hair as I stand on the balcony of my apartment, overlooking the harbor. The fishing boats are returning, their silhouettes stark against the fiery glow of the setting sun. It's a scene I've witnessed countless times, but it never fails to fill me with a sense of peace, of belonging. My life now is good, really good. Phoenix Solutions is thriving. I have more clients than I can handle, a testament to my skills, my dedication, and the reputation I've built. I have a comfortable apartment filled with sunlight and the sound of the waves. I have friends, real friends, who see me, who value me, who appreciate me for who I am. I'm happy. It's a simple word, but it carries a weight, a depth of meaning that I never understood before. Happiness isn't the absence of pain or struggle or sadness. It's the ability to embrace life in all its messy, unpredictable glory and to find joy in the everyday moments. The past is still there, of course. It's a part of me, woven into the fabric of my being. I still remember the birthdays that were forgotten, the achievements that were overlooked, the constant feeling of being invisible. I remember the accident, the pain, the darkness. I remember the rebirth, the decision to walk away, the fear and the freedom of starting over. But the past no longer defines me. It no longer has the power to hurt me. It's a chapter in my story, a chapter that has been closed, but not forgotten. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about condoning what happened. It's about releasing the hold it has on you. I haven't forgiven my family, not entirely, but I've let go of the anger, the resentment, the bitterness. I've moved on, and I've built a new life, a life filled with purpose, with connection, with joy. I've surrounded myself with people who see me, who hear me, who value me for who I am. I've found my place in the world, a place where I belong. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple, I take a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cool, salty air. I am Serena, not the forgotten daughter, not the ghost, not the victim, just Serena, and I am finally truly free, and at last I am happy.